Hi guys, this is Sai Kumar Kottivada. In this video, we will learn about API interceptors. So what is this API interceptors in Next.js? And these are also called as middlewares. What exactly middlewares do in our Next.js? So for example, whenever you write some set of middleware, whatever the API you are trying to hit and whatever you are configured in that middleware, first middleware will be triggered and based on that it will be navigating to the targeted API endpoint. So that way API interceptor will work. We'll see in real time how we can do this. Let me quickly jump into Visual Studio Code. Here, what I'm trying to do here is I have a users and let me remove all this API related stuff and we'll create something new. So now what I'll do is inside your SRC, we can create a file called as middleware. So this middleware is something a reserved file for our Next.js. Whenever you want to create a middleware, you have to create inside the SRC folder and that will be your root middleware and you can use for application only one middleware. So let me export this, export default, and I can export any of the function that is nothing but middleware. Let me export middleware as my function and this have the capability to receive the request, something like next request, and this is a function. Now here what we can do is we can write our conditions and if the conditions are satisfied we can send the data. That is first part. Second part is for some set of URLs you want to validate before going to the endpoint. That also we can do in this. Third thing is you can manage your headers, you can manage your cookies, everything inside this middleware, and based on that conversions and the changes, the next immediate API, whatever the target API we have, that will be triggered. In that way, we can configure all this. So first thing is whenever user comes with some set of users endpoint, then I want to rewrite the URL and reroute the URL. So that two things will do. What I'll do is I have something called as export const. I have config. Whenever I'm responding this config, you have to give this config as a reserved word inside the middleware. Then it will have a matchers, which is like you can give an string, you can give also an array. So for now I'm giving only a string where I'm targeting for the users. So if users hit a endpoint with the users, when we are trying to hit this API with the users endpoint, immediately this middleware will be triggered. Let's see that. Console.log of I have something called as middleware as a string. So now whenever you hit these users, it immediately goes into this middleware and it will console this middleware. Now what I want to do is I want to set some set of cookies and I want to respond back. What we can do is we have something called as response is equal to I'm giving a const and giving a response as next response dot next. So this is my method for the response. Now I'm trying to manipulate this response. Response dot I can use something like headers dot set of I can set some set of headers. So let me set the header as custom header and then let me set the value as sample. And now I'm manipulating that response header and I'm returning some data that is equivalent to the response. So now let me save this. Now what I will do is just after running this application, we can hit these users, but we don't have users route. So let me go and create our users route inside our app. So let me create a folder called as users and let me create a route file route.ts and inside this route I can export async function and let me use async function with get method and it will receive the request here as well request and that request is next request and now this is my URL which we are targeting and let me return next response dot I will respond with a JSON object where I'll pass my JSON data which is like data colon I'll pass an ID where ID is 1 and name is Sai. So this is my response. Now let me save this. And also we have this request. I'm not using it. Now what I'll do is I'll use console.log off. I'll go with users request. This is my users request and save this. Now, first thing we will go here and hit something called as users. Immediately you can see the data, whatever we are responding from this users. But before that, what's happening? It went to users request and it went to middleware. First it went to middleware, then it is coming to users request. So again, I'll try the same thing. Let me hit this. Now you can see directly it triggered the middleware and then it went to users request. That means we are allowing this middleware. Along with that, I'm checking the next URL. That means if the URL is success, then it has to go into users. But for that response, I'm adding a header, that is response header. Let's see that response header. Let me go here and inspect this. Let me go into the network and now let me hit this. So you can see the users with a response header, and the response header contain custom header which is sample. So this custom header is not added by the users endpoint. Instead, it has been added by the middleware. So we can manipulate some set of headers or cookies by using this middleware. That is point one, which we need to discuss on the middleware. Next, there is something like, let's go with response dot cookies dot set of. I want to enter something like custom cookie, comma, I want to give true, or just make it as like this and save this. Now what this will do is it will set our cookies onto the browser. Let me go here, clear this and clear this. Let me hit this. Now go to your application, and inside the application you can see there is a cookie which has been created, and the cookie is custom value. So you can just track this more, custom cookie with the value as true, and it is coming from localhost. That's how we can even set the cookies before responding our data. And now if you want to give some other things, let me go here and create one more route file that is related to login. And inside this login, let me create a file called as route.ts. And the same thing, export async arrow function, and this arrow function should have a get call. So let me go and add the get call. Let me remove export async function, async function, and give a name called as get, and it will also receive the request. I don't want to use the request. If you want to add, just add it as next request. And what I want to do is I want to return a next response dot json, and I want to return some data like login status success and save this. Now if you try to hit this login, now middleware will not be called. Why? Because we have a middleware with the matchers. So now matcher is not related to our login. So that's why you will not be going into the middleware. So let me go here. Let me hit login and hit enter. Now you got the response, and the response is login status success. But if you see into the console, it didn't trigger the middleware because this matcher is failing, and it went directly into the login. So let me go here, and if you see the cookies also, let me go into the application, let me clear this and let me refresh. Now you can see there is no cookie added, and in the response, if you go into the network, into the login, and you can see this response header, you are not seeing any custom header. So that means this middleware will invoke only when the matcher is found. So if you want to give login as a matcher, then you can give one more property, something like slash login. Then automatically this middleware will also work now because this matcher is satisfying. Let me go here and refresh. Go to the headers, you can see custom header with a sample, and if you go to the application, and you can see the cookie as a custom cookie. So like this you can use your matchers, and you can see the console middleware. Now what we'll do more with this. So for example, I don't have any matcher. Instead of matcher, you can use the URLs to write the conditions inside your middleware. So what I can do is, let me remove this console, and let me remove all the cookies and stuff, and then write like this: if my request dot URL or next URL dot path name if it is satisfying slash login. Then what I want to do is I want to return the next response dot JSON. Instead of JSON, let me return redirect to whenever the user clicks on login. So what I want to do is I want to redirect this fellow to a new URL. So let me give a new URL, and here I have a URL like slash users, which is already defined, and now I want to start it like next URL. So this is a base URL. So this is my base URL. Now I want to redirect that guy. Whenever I give login, it has to redirect directly to this users. Else, if it is not the case, that means if the path name is not equal to login, then I have to go silently to the one which the user is calling. So I can use next response dot next and save this. Now go here. If I am going with login and hit enter, now you can see it has redirected to users. So I have directly used login, and because of this matcher, it went directly into the users. So we are redirecting the data to users. By seeing this JSON object, you can tell that this is coming from users. So in the same way, without changing the URL, if you want to render this user's data, then instead of redirecting, we can use rewrite. So whenever you use rewrite, login will be the URL, but the output, whatever you are getting, that will be from users. So let me go here and hit this. Now you got users. Let me go and hit login. Again, you will be getting the same data. So the data will be same, but the URL is login. So you can even rewrite the data, and you can even redirect the data based on the path names and based on some conditions, whatever you are writing in your middleware. So now, how this helps us in real time. For example, I have two conditions. One is post login and pre-login. So let me go with app folder, and I'm creating a new folder called as post login. That means if the user is logged in, then I want to use this routes. So let me put these users inside this. And now let me go with login, and I'll create a new folder inside the app called as pre-login, and inside this pre-login I want to put all the login code. So now post login will be used for creating the routes whatever we want to use after logging in, and pre-login is mainly used when we want to have some routes which does not need any authentication. So let me go and save all. Now go to your code, and now the URLs will be changed. All the post logins will be having a post login inside the URL, and all the pre logins will have pre login URL. So now what I'll do is I'll write some conditions. If request dot next URL dot path name dot starts with, if it is starting with slash post login, that means a successful login. That means whatever your screens or the APIs which you want to use after the post login, then it has to check authentication. That is a barrier token. So for example, let's check the barrier token. Token is equal to, I want to check the barrier token. So for that barrier token, I can use request dot headers dot get of, I want to use authorization token. So if my token exists, if my token exists, continue to go. So if you want to continue that, I can use return next response dot next URL. So that means if you give users, that is post hyphen login slash users, then if you are not sending the headers, it will throw error. Otherwise, it will continue and give the response from the users. Else, if token does not exist, then I want to return next response dot, I can give something like JSON, and the JSON contains not found or unauthorized. So what I'll do is I'll use something like unauthorized. If you want to navigate to unauthorized, you can redirect as well. But now I'm using only JSON with unauthorized, where I'm passing a headers which contains a content hyphen type, and the content type is something like text or application slash HTML or plain text. You can use something like this. It's a plain text. Now, if it doesn't start with post login, no need to check anything. I can just return next response dot next. So now there are two cases. One is if the user is coming with post login, he should have authorization header, otherwise will not allow him. So first case we'll check. Go to postman and now I have post login. Let me write post hyphen login and let me give some URL called as users. And I'm not selecting this authorization. You don't have authorization. Let me hit send. Now you are showing an unauthorized response. That means the user is not authorized and we are not able to use this URL because we wrote something like if the endpoint starts with post login, then I have to check the authorization. Let me go back and now I will give authorization and let me hit this. Now you can see the response which is coming from your users. So we are getting a valid data. That means we can check this authorization as well. Now out of authorization, if we are using something like pre-login and I'm giving a login page, it does not check anything, just it will respond with the login data. So if you see login status is success. So we are getting this data. If you don't send authorization also, it will get the data because this pre-logins are not bothered about authorization, but post logins are required with this authorization. So such type of conditions also you can write in your application inside the middleware. So this is how our middleware will help us in our Next.js. So this is the third thing which we learned. One is we can redirect or rewrite, and the second thing is we can change the headers as well as cookies. And also third thing which we learned is if we want to manage any tokens or authorized URLs or non-authorized unauthorized URLs, then also we can use middleware. So this is how your middleware will work, and these are also called as interceptors, but it is happening at a API side. So these are also called as API middlewares or API interceptors. So that's about your API interceptors and middlewares in our Next.js application. Hope you like my explanation. If you like my video, like, share, subscribe to my channel for more updates. Signing off. Thank you.